Oh, man. We are one step closer to the nightmare scenario of having a final 2 of Tara and Pete. Oh. Well, it actually might be a final 3. They mentioned in this episode it's probably going to be a final 3, but even if it is Pete, Tara, and Jericho, I mean, I guess I'd want Jericho to win. He's the least worst out of them. I just hate that it's turned into survival of the weakest rather than survival of the fittest. I mean, this sometimes happens in Survivor where, like, all the weak players sort of gang up on the strong because they're like, gotta get them out, they're a threat. And then the strong players also target each other, and we end up with just losers at the end, and... The fact that Tara, a person who is technically already voted out, who has no business even being in the game anymore, is only in the game because of some stupid game twist that the producers threw in, the fact that she has outlasted so many great players like AK, Luke, Henry, Sarah, and now Ziggy, the fact that they're all gone, but Tara, of all people, is still there. Oh, it turns my stomach. It really does. It's just... I mean, the survival of the weakest thing doesn't always happen in Survivor, but it sometimes does, and it's hard to predict when it will and when it won't happen, but it does sort of bring to the forefront a new sort of principle, a lesson that we can learn from Ziggy's experience and why Ziggy was voted out. That is something that I don't think is mentioned all that much in Survivor. But first, the episode begins with Jericho upset that his buddy Luke, got voted out last night, so he spills the beans to Lockie about Tara's betrayal, but he really doesn't do a very good job. It doesn't seem like he actually told him the extent of her betrayal, that she was working to vote him out. Like, it doesn't seem like he just sort of mentions that, oh, she's been feeding us information. He doesn't say she wanted you out. I mean, he needs to be specific. Like, since he's telling the truth, he needs to add details. Say, this is what she said. We were sitting right here. You were out fishing. Add as many details as you can, because when people lie, details are vague and slippery. So you add as many details when you're telling the truth in order to convince Lockie that you are telling the truth. But he didn't seem to bother doing that, and Lockie ultimately didn't end up buying it. Tara denies any of it, and Lockie believes her. It certainly didn't help that Ziggy backed up that, oh no, she's not coming after you, don't worry about that. I mean, that certainly didn't help, but I guess she is sort of like paying Tara back for letting her have all those lollies, which now she actually has a sugar addiction. She's gotten addicted to that sugar hit. And, good work, Tara, solidifying that bond with Ziggy, really important. I'm sure that's going to long-term really help you in the game. Oh, no, she's gone and you voted her out. See, this is why you shouldn't bother sharing stuff like this with people, because especially towards this far into the game where they're just going to be gone soon anyway, don't share stuff. Don't. Just keep it for yourself. But everybody kind of realizes that going into the next vote is going to be 3 versus 3. It's going to be Lockie, Ziggy, and Tara versus Michelle, Pete, and Jericho. So Lockie realizes that he needs to bring over someone, so he tries to go to work on Jericho and feed him a lot of baloney about, oh, I think you're a really strong player, you should come over with us, blah, 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 blah. Jericho doesn't buy it at all. In fact, Jericho says in his confessional when he's talking to the camera, he says, I think Lockie thinks that I'm stupid. I certainly wouldn't go as far as to say that Jericho is stupid, but because I don't think he is, but it's worth pointing out that he did fall for Henry's idol trick. It was only when Sarah told him about it that he actually realized what was going on there. Luke also kept him in the dark more than once on different votes, and he didn't seem to pick up of what was going on until after the vote when they told him. And ultimately, he was unable to protect his best friend, his closest ally in the game. So while I certainly wouldn't say he's dumb, that for someone who's smart, he does seem to be caught off guard quite a lot. That's why I wouldn't exactly be cheerleadering for Jericho in the final 3 if he's there with Tara and Pete, because, I mean, yeah, he's the least crap of the 3, but he certainly hasn't been wonderful in any respects. But Jericho's not at all interested in flipping over to Lockie, and Lockie, to his credit, picks up on that. He realizes that's not the case, so he instead shifts his attention over to Michelle, and he tries to bring Michelle over in probably one of the worst efforts of trying to convince someone I think I've seen on Survivor. She was literally talking to him, and she was making a lot of sense. She's like, look, you have to come over to our side. And he just was not having it. He was talking to her like he had all the power in the game, and he doesn't. He has the least amount of power in the game because everybody wants him out. Even the people in his own alliance want him out. I was really shocked by the level of Lockie's arrogance there. I mean, even if you have no intention of jumping over to their side with them, trying to like boss Michelle around, I mean, have you not noticed like from her track record already that, I mean, every time someone tries to boss her around, that's happened twice. The Se02 Alliance left her out of the loop after the merge and she jumped ship and smashed that apart. Luke, Sarah and Jericho left her out of the loop when they took out Tess, and then she went and smashed them apart as well. Michelle really doesn't like being told what to do, and she's very effective at getting revenge. So when Lockie stupidly tries to order her what to do, and then she says to the camera, "I'm gonna take him down a peg," you know she's telling the truth. She's done that many times before, and she will do it again. And this is why Michelle's probably the best strategic player left in the game. And I know it's difficult to see. It's only because I've been really analyzing these episodes that I've been able to see not only how effective she is at getting revenge when people double cross her, and also surviving tough situations, like when she first came over with the merge and she took out Ben. She convinced them all to take out Ben. That was very impressive. But also she's scarily accurate with her read on different people in different situations. You remember an episode or two before when Sarah got voted out, Michelle predicted all of that. She said, "Sarah's been double dealing under the table for a very long time. I'm worried that eventually it's going to come back and bite her, and I might not be able to protect her when that happens." And sure enough, it did happen. It played out exactly like Michelle said. And she's been correct about a lot of those things numerous times. So again, when she says, "Lockie, you're making a mistake, I'm going to take you down a peg because of this," you really gotta watch out. Fortunately though for Lockie, he wins immunity, which upsets everybody because once again, they didn't have a backup plan. They were just so determined to take out Lockie, they didn't even think of a backup plan. But the general consensus on the Michelle, Jericho, and Pete side is to take out Ziggy because she's the next strongest player. Here's the thing, if you need to take out everyone who's better than you in order for you to stand a chance to win at the end, then you don't deserve to win. You might still actually win if you do make it to the end, but you don't deserve it. And this is why I'm starting to get worried about this season of Survivor. I just want someone who deserves to win, and most of the people who were deserving have already been taken out. We're left with a series of floaters and only a couple of good players. And because Lockie tries to bully someone in the other side into flipping over to them by threatening to take them all to rocks, of course they do the exact opposite and none of them are willing to flip. They just become even more steadfast that they're not going to side with him or work with him. Again, Lockie, incredibly arrogant move, not very good, dude. You catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. You can't act like you're the guy who has all the power when you clearly don't. Even back in the game when you did have all the power, because you acted like that, you lost the power very quickly. Pride comes before a fall, Lockie. I mean, of course, people don't like feeling like they're being pushed into a decision, so of course, Michelle, Pete, and Jericho dig in their heels and say, "No, we're not going to budge, and if we go to rocks, then we go to rocks." But it's also good strategy for them because they have much more reason to believe that Tara will crack and jump ship and join them than anyone on Lockie's side should think that Jericho or whoever else will jump ship. Because Tara's been wanting to turn on her own alliance for a long time. Everybody knows it. And as confused as Tara was in that tribal when everyone's trying to convince her what to do, it really wasn't that difficult a decision. There is risk no matter which way she goes. If she goes with Lockie's plan, there's risk because she could draw a rock and she could go home. If she goes with Michelle, Pete, and Jericho, there's risk there because they could turn around and vote her out the next day. The difference is, if she goes with Michelle, Pete, and Jericho, she will at least still have numbers to take out Lockie later, assuming he doesn't win immunity, of course. Whereas if she goes with Lockie, she will not have the numbers to take out Lockie later on if she wants to, because the other two surviving members will not want to work with her. There's risk either way, but only one decision gives you the numbers to take out Lockie. It's an easy choice to make, despite how much she struggled with it, but it was still great to see all that conversation going. And I was surprised actually how much Pete took up the reins of trying to convince her there rather than Michelle. I actually thought Michelle would do more convincing there, but Pete stepped up to the plate, and that was surprising. So of course Tara does the obvious and she flips to buy herself one more day and an opportunity to take out Lockie later on, and Ziggy goes home. And looking at Ziggy's gameplay, the lesson we have to learn is what could she have done to avoid this? It's not really fault that we can find with her in the way she played the game, because it's very unlikely she could have known this. We only learn this lesson now by looking back over her gameplay. But I think the lesson to be learned from the fall of Ziggy would be, if you're strong, never trust the weak. Because of that phenomenon that I mentioned earlier, of that the strong players usually target each other, and then once they're outnumbered by the weak players all gang up on them, like a pack of hyenas surrounding an injured lion. Sometimes that happens in Survivor, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on the season, depends on the contestants, depends on the vibe and the feel of the season. It's certainly happening this season. So I think a rule to remember for strong players like Ziggy is, if you're strong, never trust the weak. Of course, everybody wants to be on the final three as a strong player with two weak players sitting either side of them, so they're guaranteed to get the money. Of course, everyone wants that. Problem is that doesn't really work out all that well for the strong players, because we get what we have now, which is all the weak players picking off the strong. So really, if you're a strong player like Ziggy, your best chance to get to the end is to side with other strong players who you feel you all have an equal chance of winning with, and saying to them, we have to make it to the end together or else none of us will. See, if she had formed that bond with Lockie and with Henry, say, and she had really worked hard to try to keep those three together and to keep them in the game, she would probably have made it to the end with those three. And would she have done a good enough gameplay to beat them? I don't know. But she would have at least made it to the end. But see, by picking off the strong players, she then had to start trusting a weak player like Tara, which gives Tara the option to stab her in the back, which is what happened. So if you're strong, do not put yourself in a position where you have to trust the weak, because they will stab you in the back. Other strong players are more likely to keep you around if they understand all the strong people have to stay together. Ziggy sort of understood that. That's why she always wanted to keep Lockie around as like a meat shield for the challenges. She should have extended that to a second person or even a third person like Sarah and Henry, tried to keep them all together. But it's a really complicated and difficult game, isn't it? Because you need to make big moves, you need to be a strong player, but then if you're too strong of a player, you get targeted, so it's really hard to sort of find that balance. Whereas on the other hand, if you fly too much under the radar, you might make it to the end, but then nobody respects you, which is what I think is going to happen here at the end of this season. So it's very difficult to find that balance. So thanks for watching, guys. The channel is steadily growing, and that's great to see. I appreciate you guys who are like sharing this around with your friends, commenting. I do read every single one of the comments, even though I might not reply all the time. And if you click on the link in the description, you can find my special Twitter just for this channel that I just set up. It's different from my other Twitter for my other channel, where I was previously doing Survivor posting. But the people who follow me on that got annoyed with it, so I've got this one here just for my Survivor stuff. So follow me on that to keep up to date with video releases and all the little memes I put out and stuff like that. And until next time, I will see you in the comments.